Here with this week's hottest stories in the investment world, this is Zach's Friday Finish Line.
Hello and welcome to the Zach's Friday Finish Line. I'm Ryan McQueenie, an associate stock strategist here at Zach's, along with one of our editors, Maddie Johnson.
Hello, today is Friday, October 5th, and we are here to recap this week's biggest stories from the investment and financial world. We're going to start with a few macroeconomic focused stories. The U.S. stocks suffered their worst day in about 3 months on Thursday on the back of a rise in bond yields.
Yeah, that's right. Yields on U.S. Treasury bonds hit multi-year highs. Yesterday, I believe the 10-year Treasury note hit its highest yield since 2011 during intraday trading, and that curbed investors' appetite for stocks around the world. The rise in bond yields seemingly stems from fresh economic data and optimistic sentiment from the Federal Reserve, which may have put pressure on stocks yesterday, but is probably a good thing for us overall. So it's kind of like one of those weird counterintuitive day things. The VIX went crazy yesterday. So it was a fun one.
We've also got a few other really interesting stories affecting our favorite stocks since the last time we talked to you guys. But first, we want to cover a more quick macro story, which snagged the attention of Wall Street.
Yeah, it's Canada, Mexico, and the United States this week finalized.
Our favorite trio.
Yes, the North American boys finalized a sweeping new trade deal after several months of tense negotiations. Sweeping, I'm going to go ahead and use air quotes. Depends, I guess, what your definition of sweeping is. The pact, an update to NAFTA, is now called the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMC, which is really not creative and a 0% fun acronym, especially compared to NAFTA, which became its own word. I prefer acronyms that become their own words. Just going to throw that out there.
Okay, I like it.
This is obviously an update to NAFTA, which it was instituted in 1994. So, decades old, probably could make sense, could use an update. And promises to lead to a, quote, freer, fairer markets and to robust economic growth, end quote. NAFTA obviously required automakers. Let's start with this. The big thing here was the auto industry. The big thing in NAFTA was the auto industry. The big significant changes to this have to do with the auto industry. Notably, manufacturers now have to manufacture 75% of a vehicle's part in North America to qualify for zero tariffs. That is up from 62.5% in the original NAFTA. And then the other thing has to do with workers' wages in the auto industry. So now 40% of the value added to vehicles must come from factories that pay workers at least $16 an hour, which is about triple the average wage for factory workers in Mexico right now. So that's kind of seems like a win there for U.S. automakers as U.S. jobs, really, as the incentive to move down to Mexico is reduced a little bit because of the wage demands. Reduced a lot, really, actually, because of the wage demands. But it's kind of one of those interesting things where everybody gets a little bit of a win, but might not end up being that big of a deal because the White House did get a slight win. I got to bring home a bit of a win by convincing Canada to open up some of its dairy market, which I think we've talked about on the show as like a weirdly contentious issue because the Canadian dairy market is essentially just closed off to outsiders almost entirely. That's great. A bit of a win there for the White House and the Trump administration. But realistically, the deal that was struck probably opens up U.S. dairy farmers to about 3% of the total Canadian dairy market. So not a ton. And then Trudeau gets to go back home and say, hey, we got this win because we upheld a dispute resolution process, which was already in place and was potentially on the chopping block during negotiations. So just something that's going to continue to be the same, which Canada has used in the past to protest certain like dumping practices in terms of pricing. used by U.S. lumber companies. So then the lumber industry gets looped in as well. This is the most North American deal
Lumber,
that you can
cheese,
dairy and
milk.
milk and cars. Yeah, that's NAFTA. Now it's the USMC, which the USMCA I should say, but it was just like the USMC. I don't know if you saw it. Trump made that joke about he was just going to call it the USMC as a nod to the U.S. Marine Corps. And
oh no, I didn't see that.
Then people were like, but it's going to have an A in the end of it. So anyway, you can mix those up forever now. But yeah, that's the USMCA, which is kind of a shame that Thursday happened in terms of the new volatility, because it seemed like that NAFTA thing, that bugging NAFTA thing, was like one of the few trade headwinds that finally got resolved. So
yeah,
we'll see where it goes from here. We're going to move on. Speaking of paying people more, we talked about that. Speaking of paying people more, big week for paying people more money.
Amazon announced on Tuesday that it would be raising the minimum wage paid to its employees to $15 an hour. That's pretty big news. So the new minimum would actually apply to all of Amazon's 250,000 U.S. employees, as well as its seasonal workers hired for the upcoming this holiday season, which would total 100,000 more. So almost 350,000 roughly. So similar increases will apply to Amazon employees outside the U.S. in their local currency, and workers who are currently making more than $15 an hour will receive a prorated raise as well. Amazon's starting wage for employees is currently $11 an hour. So going from 11 to 15,
big raise.
That's a huge raise, and will be super impactful for their employees. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars.
Yeah,
I'm just doing really random math in my head a month.
That's good math, though. And I want to say the thing about the employees outside the U.S. is important, too, because if you remember the, peeing in the bottles in the warehouse incident you remember this, right? I'm not just making that up.
No, I don't remember this.
So there was this big whole scandal earlier this year where Amazon fulfillment center employees reported to Watchdogs that they were they didn't have time to take breaks because of how hard they were working, that they had to pee in plastic liter bottles in the warehouse. Oh. You didn't hear about that?
No.
Okay, that happened in the UK though. So this is an improvement as well for UK workers, which upon the first time I read this, I was like, oh, just US workers. The people who are peeing in bottles are in the UK. Which is this is all alleged and reported stuff. I don't have the facts to confirm it, and I'm not the reporter who first originated that story. But it's gonna work for the UK people as well too.
All right. Well,
but a raise in British pounds, not US dollars.
Okay, got it. And another thing to note is that the federal minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour for the past 9 years. So Amazon paying $11 an hour, and it's still a big bump from the federal minimum wage, but now going to 15. I mean,
more than twice. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's always critics.
Yes.
Particularly of Amazon. So critics of Amazon's low pay and harsh labor inclusions, including former Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, they actually congratulated Amazon and CEO Jeff Bezos. Sanders actually recently introduced, quote, Stop Bad Employers by Zeroing Out Subsidies, unquote, or Stop Bezos Act, a literal Stop Bezos Act. He said Amazon is doing exactly the right thing. So this will be really, think of kind of the widespread impact. I know we've kind of been talking about this on and off for the past few days now since it was announced, right? How will other companies and corporations react to this news? Will they raise their minimum wage? I know many companies, like Target, for example, have been planning on doing so. They gradually until 2020, they want to get to $15 an hour, but will they push it sooner? Will they get to $15 an hour this year, next year?
And it's a big conversation right now, obviously, because like you mentioned, they're bringing on the temporary seasonal people, which are also getting the raise. There's a ton of people as we talked about it a couple weeks ago, lots of people hiring seasonal employees right now.
Literally every retailer.
And so if you're gonna give all those people a raise, that's a whole lot more in terms of wages that you're paying out. Of course, you just got a huge tax cut, and you're also probably gonna have like one of a darn near record-breaking holiday quarter this year. So it can't be all bad. I mean, maybe you should have to pay people this much money with unemployment so low. Yeah, I just on the Sanders thing though, he posted a whole minute-long video on his Instagram, which was very interesting because he's all over Bezos all the time. I mean, he introduced the freaking Bezos act.
This is not the first. This is not the first.
Not a big fan. Not a big fan. But he said,
but I bet he has a Prime account.
Congratulations, you did the right thing. Good for you. So we'll see. I did see that they're kind of reducing the bonuses and the stock compensation program as a kind of a means to pay for it a little bit. But from the one Reddit thread that I read about it, where Amazon employees were chiming in, it still looks like a net benefit for the hourly workers, especially. So.
Yeah. One of the senior editors here, Tracy Reinick, she mentioned that FedEx actually pays their employees, like maybe the drivers, actually like $16 an hour. I don't know. I didn't realize. I mean, that's like awesome. Like that's a really good hourly minimum wage. So I wonder, it just, how if FedEx and UPS will then increase their minimum wage, and then like Costco was always like the highest retailer. They were like at $14 an hour. So then will they go above $15 an hour to still be like
that back?
Be like the highest paid or retailer with like the highest minimum wage. So it's all like kind of like, who's going to be next? Like, I don't know. But really, like, I guess Amazon again, like kind of like more or less setting a standard. Yeah. Setting or drawing a line in the sand, I guess, maybe a better way to put it.
Yep. And surprising because they have not been known to do that for their employees. So an interesting step forward. With that, I'm going to transition into another story that has to do with Amazon. Maybe we'll get to that part in a little bit. But Thursday, the big story in the tech world was this Bloomberg Business Week report.
Coming with the receipts.
Yes, which indicated that hardware from a company called Super Microcomputer, which is a major server manufacturer, I believe based in San Jose, it's used by dozens of U.S. companies, was actually reportedly found to contain tiny little chips about the size of a grain of rice, which could circumvent security precautions and siphon data like a Trojan horse. Hardware bugs are to many people much more dangerous than software bugs because you got to go in and get them out most of the time, or you got to go in and fix them. And software updates, software bugs can be detected and counteracted a little bit more easily. So this thing was a literal tiny little chip, and it was supposedly siphoning off data, and it was supposedly, reportedly, allegedly all an act of espionage by Chinese spies who used the chips to collect and gather and analyze data. The Bloomberg Business Week report, their sources said that Amazon and Apple noticed the devices themselves during internal investigations dating back to 2015, then got regulatory figures involved, and there have been investigations going on by the government since then. It was described as an ongoing investigation. It was described as a massive, massive thing in the intelligence community, which when we say that, think spies, actual spies. Yeah. And so when something big happens in the intelligence community, we don't know about it. That's the whole point. So that's that. I mean, it could have very well have been going on. Super Microcomputer or Super Micro, I don't maybe listeners may have heard of it, may not have heard of it. It has been described as the Microsoft of servers and supplies dozens of U.S. companies. So this is not just like a nobody in the industry. This is a lot of really big companies, a lot of really big parts. They are servers that are in U.S. government facilities as well. So certainly espionage involving this
Across
company
the board.
would not be good.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, did it actually happen? Is this story true? And Maddie, as you're going to explain for us, Amazon and Apple very firmly saying no, it did not happen.
Okay, before I get to that, I wonder if it was true, if these Chinese spies like watched the movie Troy, which is a phenomenal epic from the early 2000s. Really, truly, everyone should watch.
This is a really small version of that movie. tiny.
And they envision themselves as Brad Pitt in all his glory, tanned, long blonde hair, inside this giant, like a clearly Trojan horse. That's part of the story. It's like going into the city of Troy.
It's
and
kind of
like jumping out of the horse, the wooden horse, in the middle of the night, and then ransacking and destroying the city.
It's kind of like Troy meets Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because it's just a big Trojan horse, but very, very small. So
Yeah.
I want to say, because your comments will add some. This will add some comments to the quote you're about to share with us. Part of this story was an Amazon Web Services acquisition of a company called Elemental, and apparently that was how Amazon discovered the chips, as they were reviewing servers of Elementals during the acquisition a few years ago, and found this during like a pre-acquisition audit. So the Amazon's comments reference Elemental, and that's what it's about.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So basically, Amazon and Apple are like, this is completely false.
Yeah.
This is completely inaccurate. No, we didn't. No. But the quote from Amazon, so quote, "At no time, past or present, have we ever found any issues relating to modified hardware or malicious chips in Supermicro motherboards." Also love that word, motherboards, "in any Elemental or Amazon systems," unquote. From Apple, they said they conducted internal audits after being contacted by Bloomberg and, quote, "never found malicious chips, hardware manipulations, or vulnerabilities purposely planted in any server," unquote. So they're like, no,
Yeah.
no,
And then,
absolutely not.
And they said, no, this didn't happen. And also then threw some shots at Bloomberg Businessweek's
Basically,
reporting.
hashtag
Yeah,
fake news is
yeah.
what they're reporting. And then at Bloomberg, Apple said, quote, "We are deeply disappointed that in their dealings with us, Bloomberg's reporters have not been open to the possibility that they or their sources might be wrong or misinformed," unquote. Ooh, brutal. Amazon, quote, said, "As we shared with Bloomberg Businessweek multiple times over the last couple months, this is untrue," unquote.
Okay, so I have a couple thoughts on this. Clearly, you don't want to get got having been spied upon by Chinese spies. You don't want that. No. That's a bad look for everyone involved. It's one of those things that probably creates a drama outside of your company, and is actually like a huge major story that probably scares some people and really confirms some fears of some crazy conspiracy theorist people. Mm-hmm. It's not good. And if this did happen, this is a huge story, obviously. And then if it did happen in the reporting, it is true, or even for the most part true, tip of the cap to Bloomberg Businessweek for the reporting. They said it was been gathering facts for over a year. So this has been long in the works. They talked to, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's about 20 company and intelligence community sources that they're building these reports on. So I'm looking at that as year-long reporting with, tens of sources from varied places. My question would, how could you possibly get it so wrong that neither Amazon or Apple are even acknowledging anything remotely close to what you're reporting happened? That being said, like I said before, this isn't a particularly great look for Amazon or Apple certainly not for Supermicro Computer.
No.
If this ends up being true, or even close to true. So I can see not wanting to be like in a press release at least, or in a response to Bloomberg Business Week being like, hey, yeah, our bad. Because that certainly wouldn't suffice. And if there is some sort of ongoing investigation, perhaps there are things that you can't talk about, but this is not a no comment or decline to respond to inquiry. This is we checked every time you asked and we got nothing. So I don't know. This is again, I don't want to keep nerding out about how crazy this story is, but if it's true, pretty crazy, because that means there are tiny little bugs in servers and the Chinese are listening to all of us.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they know everything about you and I. They know everything about Apple and Amazon. It's over for us. We're done.
Yeah. I really hope they like my Spotify songs, because I listen to a lot of the songs on repeat. And some of them are kind of embarrassing. I'm not going to lie. I've listened to Shallow from A Star Is Born probably about 10 times each day since it has been released.
The soundtrack is out already?
Just the one song.
Just a single?
Shallow.
Got it.
That's the song where she does like that insane like sound. I'm not going to do it on this podcast. But it's in the trailer.
Give it a shot if you want to.
But her vocals are truly amazing, but it's kind of become a meme like from the trailer.
Are you going to see it this weekend?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be the biggest movie in the country.
I'm going to break out in song.
Yeah, that's going to be a smash hit.
It totally is. Yeah.
So anyway, and you know what? The Chinese have probably seen it already.
They probably have.
The Chinese spies, if they got that 3 months ago when it was... we kid, but everything's reported.
Also,
and alleged.
nervous laughter.
Nervous laughter. That's gonna do it for us this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. Remember, if we missed something, or if you'd like us to cover a different story, please contact us via a secured connection at podcast@zax.com. Remember to subscribe and listen to all of our other shows on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a rating there. We're also available on Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, basically anywhere that you can get your podcasts at. We're probably a little bit further down the list than Serial, but if you just keep going, you should find us. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next time on Zach's Friday Finish Line.